praise of folly. I have nothing but contempt for those wiseacres who maintain it is the height of foolishness and conceit for anyone to speak in his own praise and be taken in by it. You already know my name, gentlemen. How should I address you further? Archfools? So be it. What more honourable title could the goddess Folly use in addressing her devotees? My origins are not widely known, however, and, with the help of the Muses, I shall endeavour to trace my ancestry for you. To begin with, I am not the daughter of Chaos, Saturn, or Japhet, or any of those threadbare, decrepit, dusty old gods. My father was none other than Plutus, the god of riches, the sole father of gods and men, whatever Hesiod, Homer, and even Jupiter may say. Plutus, who at will now as ever before confounds and turns topsy-turvy the sacred and the profane. Plutus, who at his pleasure rules all the public and private affairs of mortals. Plutus, without whose help the whole race of poets, divinities, indeed the great gods themselves would not exist. This is my father, and I glory in him. My father did not make me spring from his brain, as Jupiter engendered sad and scowling Pallas Athene, but begot me with that lovely nymph called Youth, the most beautiful, joyful, and amiable in the world. My father and mother were not married. Free love presided over my birth, and I am the daughter of pleasure. If you also want to know where I was born, since nowadays that is paramount when it comes to judging noble birth, I was not born on the wandering islands of Delos, like Apollo, nor from the bosom of the rolling sea, like Venus, nor from the fathomless caves. I was born in the Fortunate Islands, where everything grows without ploughing or sowing, that incomparable land. Toil, sickness, and old age are unknown there. Everywhere the senses of sight and smell are delighted there by rua, panacea, nepenthe, marjoram, ambrosia, lotus, rose, violet, hyacinth, and all the gardens of Adonis. Being born amid these delights, I did not greet the world with crying, but straightway smiled at my mother. I do not envy the mighty son of Kronos, his she-goat nurse, for two charming nymphs suckled me at their breast. Drunkenness, the daughter of Bacchus, and Ignorance, the daughter of Pan. You can see them here among my attendants. Allow me to introduce them to you.
Okay, progress update on the sketching. The point of this sketch was to figure out my color choices and to figure out a technique that was going to work, as this is only a component part of a much larger mural idea. A technique that was going to work to replicate it in various ways multiple times throughout the entirety of the mural, but also in a way that was going to be able to not sort of reduce down too much to just a single silhouette over and over again. My reference points again are largely late medieval, early Renaissance reference points. I did not want to go too photorealistic. I wanted that to meld with my own personal drawing and painting style. And I also, you're never going to fully get rid of the Cézanne influence in my work. So I had all of these various things in mind. What I also am going to be contending with is replicating the colors that you get in pairs. So you will see obviously green of pairs, some gold depending on the type of pair, but also many, many points. Let's see if I can show you here. Many points of like oranges and rust browns and peachy colors and so on and so forth. So how to render that three-dimensionally without muddying my color choices. Bearing in mind as well that the other botanical choices I'm making for this mural are going to be, I think anyway, periwinkles and belladonna. So what you will see here is my first attempt, my second attempt, my third attempt. This one might not have actually been caught on camera because I think my camera cut out at some point. These two, you know, fine, kind of muddy. This one in particular, I think, came out rather muddy. This one looks, from this vantage point, relatively okay on camera, but in person it looks patchy. It's patchier than it appears on camera even. And it was time consuming. It was the first one I did. I was only just sort of figuring things out. And what I realized is how muddy these various colors get very quickly, unsurprisingly. The colors that go into making a pear look like a pear, if blended together too much, become just muddy brown. So the technique I want to go for is this one, where it was actually much simpler to execute, which is obviously good for, you know, practical reasons, but it's also good because a lot of the time simpler color choices, simpler techniques actually work out better to communicate what you're doing anyway. You know, you don't want to overwhelm the senses, overwhelm the eye. And so what I did here was a basic color wash with some other very, very sort of messily applied colors worked in, and then I did an overlayer to kind of blend things together with white in most places, and then a few flecks of this almost deep plum bluish purple color to indicate shadow. I think what I will do over time is probably not spend too much time doing the what's it called, like the scar at the bottom of the fruit, because there will be a good number of these pears on the wall, and they will not be the only thing going on. There will be branches, there will be the belladonna, there will be the periwinkles, there will be potentially even some green foliage at some point. But what was good about this is that the purple tone here reads as a shadow in the otherwise warmer toned, also greens, like warm greens essentially of a pear. The greens of the pear and the gold nature, the gold warm tones of the pear will talk to the foliage and the gold lettering that I also hope to include on the wall. But the shadow tones, these very, you know, slight flecks of this bruised plum blue purple color will talk to the periwinkles and the nightshade. That is the goal anyway. And I like that this is reduced down a bit more to a silhouette. That to me recalls the medieval and early Renaissance influence a bit better than some of this other stuff, this other messy work does. So that's the update on the pears, essentially. We'll have to see how the whole thing comes together. But I think also what will be interesting is if I decide once I'm on the wall to go around and clean up edges, for example. With some of these being very, very sort of blurred edges, I may wish to go in and clean up some of these. The wall is the alabaster color that I have also on some of my walls downstairs. I grew up in a town dancing on the alabaster. Some days I'd burn it down if I could buy the gasoline. Anyway, the wall is an alabaster color, so I could either clean it up with actual wall paint, which would be interesting, maybe watered down wall paint or something like that. That would certainly register it very much matching the color behind, and in a very matte kind of way, which might allow the pears to pop even more, and so on, you know, whatever else I'm painting to pop even more. However, I also wonder if cleaning it up with a straight up white may cause the contrast to the contrast between white and the work to pop more. And if I do it watered down and blend it out at the edges, I wonder if that would make the mural pop from the wall even more. That'll be an interesting and potentially annoyingly tricky thing to test, but we'll have to see. Either way, this is the status update. I'm going to be going mostly with this kind of look rather than anything like these. And yeah, we'll see how the whole thing progresses from there. And we'll see if I remember to do updates in the meantime.
This one you observe here, with her proud eyebrows arched, is, of course, self-love. That one, clapping her hands and with laughter in her eyes, is flattery. The one leaning on her elbows, with her hands folded, is idleness. And that one, crowned with a garland of roses, her body scented all over, is pleasure. The one with the darting eyes is madness. The one with the plump, smooth skin is called sensuality. Among the nymphs there you can see two gods, intemperance and sound sleep. These are my household attendants, who loyally help me to bring the whole world under my sway, and even to rule over kings. So now you know all about my parents, my upbringing, and my companions. And now, so that nobody may accuse me of usurping the title of goddess, I shall show you how useful I am to gods and men, and how far my divine power extends. Listen carefully. First of all, what can be sweeter and more precious than life itself? And to whom can the living owe their conception more than to myself? Neither the spear of haughty Pallas, nor the shield of Jupiter begets and propagates the human race. What is it, I ask you, which begets gods and men? Is it the head, the face, the breast, the hand, or the ear? All thought of as parts of the body worthy of respect. What begets and propagates the human race? It is another part, one so foolish and absurd that it cannot be named without laughter. There is the true sacred fount from which gods and men draw life. But I shall gain little credit as the source and seed of life, unless I can also prove that, broadly speaking, all the advantages in life are generously bestowed by me. What would this life be without its voluptuous pleasures? Would it deserve to be called life? Would there be any day that was not dreary or unpleasant, annoying, tedious or troublesome, unless I played a part in it, seasoning it with pleasure? Let Sophocles, a poet who can never be adequately praised, be my witness when he pays a tribute to my honour and glory with the words, "The less wisdom a man has, the happier he is.
Okay, so another quick little update as I keep working on things. You will see the page here that I painted, notes that I took, I think mostly on camera, questions I'm asking myself about how regular I want to get with certain shapes, what sort of color associations I want to draw, and so on. Part of the dilemma is the intricacy and irregularity of the belladonna plant as contrasted to the needs for a mural, but also the reference material of the tail end of the Middle Ages. So here you will see an example in my medieval book of flowers of belladonna rendered from the year 1300. Let's see, the reference point is 1300 Italian Egerton manuscript, circa instance. Here is something from the Nightshade family. This is, what does it say there? 16th century French. So what we're basically seeing is, to varying degrees, this obviously more so, a plant rendered geometric, more regular and pattern-like for the purpose of a flat page, and for the purpose more specifically of ornamentation in a lot of cases rather than biological identification. So another example that I still have questions to ask about, but if I go over here on Pinterest, there is this image, which I will zoom in on, that is supposedly 16th century. De Materia Medica, Dioscurides. Now, the colors on this look to me like they were colored later, possibly by, I don't know, someone late Victorian. This seems weird to me. Color-wise, part of the reason for that is I have looked up this manuscript, although not in any particular detail just yet. And these are pages from a facsimile version of this manuscript. So if I flick through real quick, these are the sort of colors in print materials that we might be used to in the Renaissance and in the early modern era. People who are familiar with various tarot decks might recognize some of these color choices from the Solabusca tarot. We're not going to get that same sort of scintillating mixing and blending of tones and tonalities and surface areas in earlier manuscripts, printed or done by hand, you know, as we would in later materials. Honestly, quite late if it's print. If it's colored by hand, that might be slightly different, but stylistically, to me, this is worlds apart from this. Does anybody else see that? These are anyway, I have questions about this. So, you know, Pinterest, where credits go to die. Oh, look at that. Look. Anybody recognize that? Anyway, so basically what I'm trying to do is bridge the gap between these and decide where on that spectrum, for lack of a better word, I would like to fall. The other consideration / constraint with which I'm dealing, and I will get up and move so as to show. Here are the very, very preliminary sort of sketches I've done for the branch work. This is going to change slightly. This has actually been in place for a bit now. If I sit down, I can show a little better. This has been in place for a bit now, and I'm working on changing this. The reference for this is a very particular one, which I will discuss perhaps another time. And I'm also asking myself how far I want to extend it. It will, of course, also arch up and around the altar on this side as well. And so you can readily apprehend that part of what I'm dealing with is, one, the strata at which certain botanical elements appear. Periwinkles at the bottom, belladonna somewhere near the middle, pears towards the top, and my golden lettering throughout. The second question is relative size. Do I want to retain realism in that sense, or do I want to go full-on impractical manuscript door to other world? Reality matters less here than the symbolism does. Or I should say realism, stylistic realism mattering less than the prevalence and the in-your-faceness of the symbolism. All of that remains to be decided. There's going to be practicality considerations at play as well. What I'm dealing with in terms of surface texture, let's see if I can see it. Yeah, what I'm dealing with in terms of surface texture on this wall is a lot of irregularity and so on and so forth. So I don't think I can afford to be too precise in my line work. I certainly can't afford to be perfectionist in my thinking, because that will just irritate me. I genuinely prefer to plan for asymmetry so that it looks intentional rather than symmetry that I will never be able to achieve. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment. And we'll have to see how that all turns out. Actually, giving it some thought, I kind of have the answer here in front of me with this other member of the nightshade family. Let's see if I can... Here's an example of a leaf where we do have the vein pattern on the leaf and so on, but it is also highly stylistically rendered. Flowers and so on do have... Can I focus the camera? Come on. Flowers and so on do have individual petals, but they are, for the most part, one color with, say, for example, here, this light purple with a darker purple underneath. Please excuse the state of my fingernails. Oh my God. And then if we were to come away from the page, we also overall have individual stalks and so on, but we are tracing a shape, right? Moving in certain directions. Everything is stylized while still retaining some of the details, some of the recognizable characteristics of the plant, and fit into a required space. So obviously not following the natural growth patterns of the plant per se. I think that makes the most sense. This way I can determine what direction I want the plants to go in, what level of detail to include, and the confines of my space will be more what determines the level of detail, and so on and so forth. So something along these lines anyway is, I think, going to be my solution. Okay, so following on from the questions I was asking myself the other day, I did a rough sort of schematic sketch, playing around with the motifs that I know are going to go into the wall mural, but also not following necessarily the shape and plan I'm going to be doing, because I wanted to see how flexible and open to change the techniques I was thinking about are. I wanted to test how much I could reduce the visual signatures of a plant down to its sort of not quite bare minimum geometry, and have it still be recognizable. And I also wanted to see how much I would be able to make shapes with the botanicals as I went. So here you'll see sort of a domed shape. Here you'll see almost like a flame shape. I just wanted to see what it felt like to create different compositions, to create different visual balances as the mood struck me. And I wanted to see that overall what would emerge was something visually intelligible with clear but organic strata to it. I also wanted to see how much that was open to change, how much I could edit that at any given time while still in the pencil stages of things. So that is what this is. Ignore the brush stuff here. That was a brief idea that I was just testing slightly and have already made a decision about. I'm pretty sure anyway. So yeah, I think overall this is going to work. Obviously, not only are these not the proportions that I'm going to put on the wall because they're on a sketchbook page and not the size of my wall, but they're not the proportions anyway, because in this drawing you will see that the trunks of these trees split into 3 at the bottom, joining into 2 just here, before splitting off again in various sort of labyrinthine directions. They are much thicker in comparison to how they will be on the wall, which hopefully will be good because it should give me much more room to play when it comes to deciding on the placement of things and putting the various blossoms and berries and so on in the negative space between the branches in most cases, but without therefore overwhelming the negative space. I had an entire conversation with my partner earlier today, actually in part using the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot as an example, that part of what makes something seem historical, especially in terms of belonging to the late Middle Ages, early Renaissance in terms of visual cues, or indeed things like millefleur or old botanical books, old works of print, and so on, is the very, very heightened awareness and use of negative space. The way in which an artist does not overclutter the space around things is, at least for me, one of the strongest markers of someone who kind of has looked at a lot of that stuff and knows how to make it read to the eye as historical. And actually, that would be a great way to distill the ways in which I tend to not think of myself as a maximalist nor a minimalist, because I really, really value negative space. And perhaps even from a neurodivergent perspective, it's what makes the difference, all the difference for me, between something that overwhelms the eye and the brain versus something that pleases the eye and the brain. Although, of course, much of that is subjective preference. So, that being said, pointing you at the floor because I don't really feel like looking at myself in the mirror today. Oh, look, it's mess. Anyway, that being said, that's where we're at the moment with this.